When you think of Spider-Man's classic villains, a few key faces probably pop into your head. And one of the very first, that menacing shape soaring over the New York skyline, is the Vulture. He's that brilliant, bitter old man in a winged suit, right? But what if I told you the story of the Vulture is way more complex than just one guy's grudge? Let's dig in and find out who else has actually worn those wings.
So let me ask you a question. How many people do you think have officially taken on the Vulture mantle? I mean, we all know Adrian Toomes, but is he really the only one? Could there be more?
Believe it or not, the answer is 5. That's right, 5 different individuals have terrorized the skies as the Vulture. A little surprising, right? Well, that's exactly what we're here to unpack. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with why the Vulture is such a classic villain in the first place. Then we'll get to know the original, Adrian Toomes. After that, we'll meet the whole flock of his successors. We're also going to explore what makes Toomes more than just a bad guy. And finally, see how the character took flight from the comics to the big screen. Okay, first things first. Let's really set the stage for just how fundamental this character is to the whole Spider-Man story. So here's what makes the Vulture so important. He wasn't some villain they added years later. He showed up in the second issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, way back in 1963. He was Spider-Man's second major costumed baddie, right after the Chameleon. Think about that. This wasn't just some villain of the week, he was a foundational threat that helped define Peter Parker's journey as a hero from the very beginning.
Now let's get to the man most of us picture when we hear the name Vulture, the one, the only, Adrian Toomes.
Man, this is such a classic comic book origin. Toomes wasn't born evil, he was pushed. Here you have a gifted inventor who poured his entire life into his work, only to be completely betrayed and cheated by his business partner, Gregory Bestman. With his life's work stolen and the law just failing him, he took his greatest invention, that electromagnetic flight harness, and decided to take back what he felt he was owed with interest. And here's a fascinating little piece of behind-the-scenes history for you. Co-creator Stan Lee originally wanted a big, bulky villain. But the artist, the legendary Steve Ditko, he argued for that lean, predatory look we all know today. And his reasoning was super practical. A skinnier character just took up less space on the page, which left more room for dynamic action and storytelling. It was a simple artistic choice that ended up defining the Vulture's menacing, bird of prey vibe for decades.
And let me tell you, Toomes has had a long and very, very strange career. Just a year after he first appeared, he became a founding member of the original Sinister Six. Over the years, he's faced death, even curing himself of cancer by literally siphoning the life force out of a shape-shifting android. I mean, how wild is that storyline? And in a much more recent twist, it was revealed he's the grandfather of a new teenage hero named Starling. But like we said at the top, Toomes isn't the whole story. His legacy is way more complicated than that, because a whole bunch of other people have tried to fill his wings. So first up was Blackie Drago, Toomes' prison cellmate who straight up stole the suit. Then you had Clifton Shalott, a professor who mutated his own body to copy the Vulture's powers. Yikes. And much later, we got Jimmy Natale, a mob cleaner who was transformed into this monstrous acid-spitting vulture. For each of them, the Vulture persona wasn't just a costume. It was a symbol of power and a shortcut to getting noticed. All of them trying to capture that same fear the original inspired. But here's the real deep-cut piece of trivia. The first character in Marvel Comics to be called the Vulture wasn't a Spider-Man villain at all. It was this guy, Isidoro Scarlatti, an Italian atomic scientist who fought the original Human Torch way back in 1953, a full decade before Adrian Toomes ever took flight. Wild, huh? But, despite all these successors, Adrian Toomes remains the Vulture. And that's because, over 60 years of stories, he's become so much more than just a simple thief in a bird suit. This contrast right here really gets to the heart of what makes him tick. On one hand, he's a ruthless criminal, a founding member of the Sinister Six who would not hesitate to kill. But on the other hand, he's shown these surprising moments of humanity. He committed crimes to pay for his grandson's medical care, and, like we mentioned, he's the grandfather of a hero. This duality is exactly what makes him so compelling. And his history is just filled with these complex, tragic moments. He actually befriended May Parker's fiancé Nathan, only to accidentally cause his fatal heart attack during a fight with Spider-Man. And there's this dark irony that his flight suit, the very source of his power, also gave him cancer. He's a man who's constantly fighting his own mortality, his own legacy, and the consequences of his choices.
So, with a history this rich and this complex, it's no wonder the Vulture was a perfect character to adapt. Let's see how his legacy was built beyond the comics.
I mean, he's been a staple of Spider-Man animation for generations, from the classic 1967 cartoon to the beloved 90s series and more modern takes like The Spectacular Spider-Man. Each version played with his design and his motivation a little bit, but they always kept the core of the character intact, which just proves his enduring appeal. But for most people, Michael Keaton's incredible performance in Spider-Man: Homecoming is the definitive Vulture. The movie brought the character to a massive global audience and just masterfully updated his origin. Instead of a betrayed business partner, he became this blue-collar salvage worker pushed into a life of crime by corporate greed. It perfectly captured that same sympathetic yet totally menacing quality that made Adrian Toomes so compelling in the first place.
So that leaves us with one final question. After all these years and all these different men, what's the true source of the Vulture's power? Is it just the incredible technology of the flight suit that lets a man soar? Or is it the grounded, bitter, and tragically human motivations of the men like Adrian Toomes, who were driven to put on the wings in the first place?